Hi, everybody. Scott Riley, the Market Update Desk, August 19th, NMLS number 157524. Kind of not a ton of data this week, but I want to go over some of the things that were said today and go over some of the information that's going to be later this week that will definitely be the market movers for the week. This morning, we did have Treasury Secretary Bessent do an interview on CNBC, said that he'll be interviewing 11 candidates for the next Fed chair. It's going to start pretty much right after Labor Day. He's going to narrow that list down and then present the findings to President Trump for his review. Now, he also was asked about the hot producer price index report. That's the PPI report that last week came in at a scorching 0.9%. He brought up a very interesting point, saying that a big component of the increase was investment services, which goes up when asset prices increase. Now, of course, there was some tariff impact as well, but it's a very interesting analysis and subject that part of that increase was from assets increasing and the investment cost associated with that that's charged. Now, the Zillow rental index also came out, showed that blended rents for July fell from 2.9 to 2.6 year over year. That's a good thing. We've been seeing this deceleration, but the figures within the CPI and PCE are just much higher. The biggest reason is that the BLS is using guesswork, or also called imputed numbers, specifically regarding the owner's equivalent rent. Now that's at 4.1%. And when you adjust that versus the Zillow numbers, which are real time, keep in mind, not backward looking or imputed, the weighting in the CPI and core CPI is being overstated by almost 0.5%. That means core CPI would actually be much closer to 2.6% versus 3.1%. And boy, would that make a difference in the bond market and the traders' view of where inflation is and where we would be with mortgage rates too, if this was actually real time versus lagging or imputed. Now, if the BLS wants to get the inflation numbers correct, they need to start using real-time data like we talked about and less imputed data. So we're hoping that's one of the changes that's going to start to filter through the BLS. Now we got new housing data today. Housing permits. Now that's the most forward-looking supply indicator because it's letting you know what's going to be on the market in the future. That fell almost 3% month over month and continues to trend to the lower of the readings for the whole year. Now, all of the decline was in multifamily. Single family actually moved up a modest 0.5%. Now, that's very interesting because we've seen all these multifamilies start to be built or come online. We talked about maybe a saturation point hitting there. Looks like maybe with these permits, we're starting to see that. Now, for housing starts, the single family increased by 5% to 1.43 million. Now, that's a very positive thing to start to see an increase. But most of those gains, now keep in mind, for the starts, was in multifamily, where permits was in single family. Now, the single family starts level is the second lowest of the year and points to a limited supply coming on in the future. Completions rose 6% with all the gain coming from single family. So in the short term, we will start to see some help in the inventory from new homes, but keep in mind that's in the short term. We also saw the NAHB home builder sentiment stabilize around 32, and that's been consistent the last few months, which is a very weak figure and shows that it's in contraction. Now, traffic did increase 2 points to 22, but keep in mind that's from a very low reading in the previous months. Some of the other things we saw today was Home Depot kicks off earnings season for the large cap retail companies. We did see Anthony Scaramucci, who was in the previous administration with Trump. He's heading up a crypto conference in Jackson Hole to parallel the Fed symposium in Jackson Hole. And that's on purpose to try to get some traction continued for cryptocurrency. We did also see Howard Lutnick do an interview today on CNBC also. And what he focused that conversation on was Intel specifically. When the CHIPS Act was passed a couple of years ago, they were awarded a $7.9 billion grant. Now, what he wants to see is some equity for the U.S. Taxpayer versus just a grant. So we're going to kind of see where that goes. So tomorrow we're going to get the big linchpin for the week. We get Fed Chairman Powell's statement and commentary Q&A at the Jackson Hole Symposium, and that's normally when they announce new changes for the Fed or gives a insight into the direction for the next year. Realistically, he's going to talk about easing. We're obviously planning on a quarter lower rate cut in September, but maybe that speech is going to give some insight into October, November, December, January. We're seeing the 10-year Treasury hold pretty steady today, 4.3101 as I'm looking at the ticker right now. Still trading in a very narrow range. Everything's waiting for Chair Powell's speech tomorrow. Obviously, any day can bring quick changes, and we try to stay up to date on that with market moving information. Give us a call. We'll help you with your pre-approvals. Communicate with your realtors. Work to get your offer accepted using our market knowledge, presence, experience, and availability. 616-293-2189. Hope you have a fantastic day.